G'day, Broadside. Well, this is it. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. Seaplanes, yes. And here we go with a seaplane painting tutorial. Yep, really nice quality miniature. Very big fan. Okay, well, first of all, as you can see, I have undercoated this one. And then we're going to have to base coat it a bit later. I'm going to do two different camouflage patterns or identification patterns. One more sort of wooden and canvas, and the other one more military looking, I guess. So as you can see by my hand, I've been undercoating, and that's all undercoated now. I've got one here that isn't, so I've just cleaned it up along the back with the knife, just along the back there. There's some stuff that gets caught on here, some stuff that gets caught inside the tail there, but and then sometimes there's even stuff that gets caught inside between the ailerons or stanchions, I think they're called, not ailerons. Yeah, so you just get in there and clean that up, blow out whatever's sitting in there. All right, and that's what we're painting today. So I'm a really technical kind of guy. So that is blue tack in the top of a super glue lid. So there's a stand you can just push into that. I'm sure you have a far more high-tech solution to keeping miniatures in place. All right, all I'm doing is using white, that's it. And what we're gonna do, paint along the wings. So I use a lot of water to water down my base coats, just to make sure that they run into the places we want them to go into. Oops, sorry about that. Concentrate on what you can see rather than what I can see. But yeah, so I'm using a very watered down white paint. And the idea is to get it into all of those nooks and crannies, have it run in there. It's good if you have a different colored resin to white, then you get a much better impression of how much coverage you've got, which is good. All right, so you get the general idea. It's basically get the white paint in there, wait till it's dried, come back and do another coat too. All right. So I just wanted to introduce you to the very lovely Stuttgart and talk very quickly about scale. So that aircraft, you can see it there at the back. It's not the same one. This one's an English one, that one's a German one. But you get the idea of the scale. So we have blown the aircraft up simply to give them a bit more presence on table. So what we would like from you, of course, is feedback on whether or not that's something you'd like, because we can give you a plane that big to fit on your big flight stand. That's not an issue. So it's just down to personal preference. We wanted to be able to see this. And obviously, it's out of scale now. And it's even out of scale with the Zeppelins as well, which will be in proper, in the same scale, 1,500 scale. Your feedback, as always, is how we do it, because that's what it's all about. We're getting the product to you. So jump on the Facebook site, send us an email, drop us a Facebook message about what you would prefer. But I like this scale because I like to paint well, and I like to I'm going to add rondelles to this, and I'll show you the rondelles as we go forward. But yeah, that becomes a little bit harder on planes that big. And yeah, they're a bit fragile too when you try and get them off the build plate, and when you try and clean them up, and the amount of support they have to have, and then you put them on the flight stand, the ones that survive the cleaning process and the painting process, so in this case, it is a matter of strength. It's also a matter of detail. And that's why we've given you bigger seaplanes. But, you know, let us know what you think. All right, back on with the painting video. Okay, so back to the painting. So I've chosen to mix field grey and olive green together to make the Naval Air Force colour that I'm going to use for the fuselage. So it's not, it's I don't know, it's a bit more vibrant than what you would expect, you know, from military greens. So I'm going to try and avoid painting the tail because that's going to have 3 colours on it. I'm doing it again, aren't I? I'm going to try and leave the pilot's head from being painted as well. That's what that little thing is there. It's the pilot's head. Oh, actually, that's the navigator, isn't it? The pilot's further forward. So I'm getting underneath the aircraft as well. And that is pretty much all you're doing, is that one little bit. Because the front is going to be sort of that engine grey. And so are the float pods. And the wings I'm going to do in that sort of desert yellow colour. Alright, so the tail goes a bit further back, but not too much further back. That's about where 3 colours begin. And the other thing is that this is actually meant to be a float pod as well. So it helps to carry the colour. Ooh, I'm doing it again. Carry the colour over the top. So then it's the same on both sides. There we are. Underneath as well. And that's it, just sort of move into the light a bit more. Sort of like a sleeve, I guess. And as I say, we're going to be painting the front where the propeller is. We're going to be painting that grey, and the float buoyancy thingies underneath, we're going to be painting those grey as well. Alright, that was easy, wasn't it? Okay, so on with the grey now. I want to do a dark grey first, and then we'll come back and do a really quick dry brush over the top with a light grey. So the engine bit hangs up over the wing as well. It's a bit that protrudes out of the top. So I'm being careful. There isn't a big surface here to paint. But the good news is I'm leaving the wings so I can come back and correct any errors I make by painting in the wings. But of course the wings will be a lighter shade of... So please excuse me getting in the way of what you're looking at the whole time. I'm really not used to painting with a camera. Yes. Wish there was more to say other than paint, 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 paint. Here we go. Okay, so it's going to do that tiny little bit on the top, and that's the grey. Done. And as I say, so that's a bit darker than I want it to be eventually. So now we're going to do the bits at the bottom. Yeah, I made an error there. Nothing I can't fix by coming back with white once it's dry, which will be the plan. Obviously, leaving things white is absolutely unideal. You have to get a layer of colour on absolutely everything. So I've mixed this colour. It's sort of that German grey from Vallejo, mixed with some Bianco. So some of this will actually be covered inside the flight stand. But I want to make sure all of this at the bottom is grey, because there are cables there holding the two floats in place. Now there are two smaller ones underneath the wings, but I suspect I might end up painting over those at a later stage when I do the wings anyway, and I'll come back and add them in afterwards because they are quite fiddly. Alright, so there is a float at the rear of the aircraft, so I'm going to paint that grey as well. And that will tell me where I need to fix up with the green. So there we are. So yeah, as I say, it's a bit dark, but it is a bit dark on purpose. We'll come back and give it a quick highlight / dry brush. All right, so we're 2 colors in. Now the wings, which is the easiest part of the lot. So I've chosen Iraqi Sand. You know, feel free to choose whatever color you like. But I think once we wash this, and that's the idea here, is to get some... Ooh, that's probably a bit much. Get some variation in the wings by washing it. I'm also going to add some wash to the navigator's head to try and get some sort of corona going around to make it look like there's a cockpit he's sitting in. So I'm just brushing this on at the moment very delicately to avoid getting onto that engine bit we just painted in grey. So that's the colour there. Now remember, these are not stopped with camels. They're not going to deliberately go off and seek out the enemy and all those sorts of things. So, you know, just reconnaissance planes. They're not flying circus planes with all sorts of weird and wonderful colours on them. Lots of water on the brush. Once again, just to deliberately get that paint to run into everywhere, because we've got bits under here that are a bit fiddly, aren't they, in between the supports for the wing. It's okay if the colour seems thin and a bit wishy-washy at first. You can always come back and do a second coat. That's the name of the game with painting, is accuracy and patience. And you are never done painting the miniature until it is done. And don't think at any stage during your paint that it looks terrible and you're just going to give up, because the secret is painting does look terrible until you have finished. Doesn't matter what miniature you're painting. Until you have gone through all of the steps and completed painting the miniature, it will look bad. So don't give up on yourself. Give yourself the patience, the time you need, and if you're getting frustrated with it, go do something else. Painting is really much better if you just take your time. So I did the undercoat for these things yesterday. So we're on a new day today. And that way I can be sure that the paint isn't going to run. I like having multiple things sitting there ready to be painted. And that way you can undercoat and base coat and then go make dinner. Yeah, those sorts of things. All right, so you get the basic idea. It's coming into shape already. I mean, once the tail gets painted in, the miniature will pop a lot more. And I know what you're thinking. 3 stripes? Are you kidding me? It's not going to be that hard. We'll get through this. Okay, well, I'm going to let that dry and then touch it up a bit, and I'll come back with the Operation 3 stripes. All right, so touched it up. So the colour is a bit more solid now. As I said, that's a very dark grey. We're going to come back and highlight that. But now it's time for Operation 3 stripes, before we move on to rondelles and washes and all those sorts of things. Just a quick note, so obviously you've seen me block colour stuff, but when it comes to other things, this is what I use. As you can see, makes things a little bit easier when you look through that. It has a light, and you look through the magnifying glass onto the miniature itself. For 1/1500 scale miniatures, I would recommend. All right, so onto the tail. Now, because we did such a fantastic job on undercoating, the white is already there for the blue, white, and red on the tail. So the other 2 colors are these 2, Prussian blue and red. Once again, Vallejo, but they're not endorsing me, so I just like them. So it's very simple. It's just going to be a single stripe of a color onto a finer brush. What's this one? This one is a 000. And it is going to be really easy. It's just going to be one line. Now I'm going to do that using that magnifying glass I showed you earlier, because otherwise I'm going to mess it up. So there it is. That's just the one line. You just take your guide from the end of the green. We want to make them quite thick. We're going to exaggerate the colors here. or at least the size of them. Gives the eye something to catch onto. That's the hardest of the 3 lines. The next one's really easy, so we're going to apply the red to the tail, and then just leave a white space. And done. So this is a perfect example of why you want something to dry before painting on it. So if that undercoat was still wet, that would turn into a disaster. All right, so little tips: you have to continue the color all the way around and over the top as well. And you have to make sure that those 3 stripes are in proportion. I think I might come back and add a tiny little bit more blue. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with that. All right, onto the pilot. Continuing with the 000 brush, and now onto flat brown, which I think is a really good sort of leather color. There we go, that's it on the brush. And there is a little dot there, that's the navigator's head. Here you can see it. I've left it as white as I possibly can, and I'm going to apply paint using that, and we'll come back and have a look at the results, because I'm going to do it using a magnifying glass. Alright, so there it is. I really hope you can see that little brown dot. But, so I messed it up, of course, and I got some of the brown paint on the fuselage, so I came back again with the green color that's still sitting on my paint palette here and fixed up where I had made an error. So there we have a nice little dot. Makes it look like I'm a really good painter, but in fact, really, I just came back and painted green around the brown that I'd slapped on all over it. And we're going to make it look a little bit better by adding a corona to it by, once this has been sealed with varnish, the wash I put over it will run better, and then it will then form a corona around the outside of the pilot to make him look like he's sitting in a cockpit. That is the plan, folks. Hold on tight. All right, so I'm going to come back and do those other floats underneath the wing, and then I will leave this miniature to rest, because I want to then show you how to do the roundels. I'm pretty happy with those colors. Yeah, I hope you've had the same kind of success. And don't forget, the next steps are the roundels once the wings are dry. Obviously, I'm not going to even attempt it with wet wings, because the roundels are 3 colors, and all of which will sit on top of each other. So, you know, it's patience again. Patience, patience, patience. If we do it right, we only have to paint this one aircraft, because you only really need the one. Yep, so the next steps are those roundels, some highlights on the grey to make it a bit lighter, to give it a bit more depth, and then the wash. Okay, so the roundels. We are going to start with blue, and we're going to make a circle of blue. It's going to take up most of the wing, and then we will add white to the blue once it's dry, and then leaving some blue around the outside, and then we're going to add the smallest of dots in red to the middle. That's how it goes, and the idea is to take up as much of the wing as possible. So because that's how they have them. They don't have them at the end of the wings, they're about there, so they're not all the way to the end, they're somewhere around here, and they take up pretty much all of the wing space. All right, so we're going to start off with blue. I know that it is technically a white around the outside, but yeah, that will be a little bit hard, so I'm just going to skip that. And once again, I'll be employing the use of the magnifying glass. Surprise, surprise. And I'll come back with the results. Wish me luck. All right, so there's my dot. So what I've done is I've engaged the brush on the wing. All right, and then using the magnifying glass, all I've done is made circular movements with my hand to make that dot as round as humanly possible. Obviously, it's not round. It's as round as it can be with the naked eye. Yep, so engage the brush onto the wing where you want to use it, and then just make circular motions like that. And then with the brush engaged, don't lift the brush off the wing, just circular motions like that. Really subtle ones. Yep, and that's the first dot. So I'll do the other one. I'll let those dry and then we'll come back to add the white. Alright, so I've done both. The other dot didn't come out as symmetrically as I would like it to have done. So I've come back with the wing color, which is Iraqi Sand, and I have painted in around the rondelle to return it to some semblance of circularness. There you go, so that's where we're up to. We will leave this late war version of the short 184, and I'm going to change to a lot more painter-friendly earlier war style scheme with aircraft number 2. For those of you who are a little less ambitious, alright, so we're going to start with painting in just this Iraqi Sand. So we're going to use Iraqi Sand on absolutely everything except the engine and the floats. We don't need to do those. We're going to just do those in the plain brown. And you know, whether or not you want to go on to do rondelles and all those sorts of things is up to you, but we'll start on this one next. There we go, all just the one color. Left some of it clear, just in the white, because I'm going to paint over some of that. But we're going to go for an earlier war version of the aircraft that, you know, they didn't prioritize having so many markings and camouflage patterns and all those sorts of things. And we'll do that. In the meantime, let's go back and finish those rondelles off. Alright, for this you will need the whitest of white, and the idea is to find the middle of the aircraft, of the rondelle. Excuse my dog having a scratch in the background. And just let me know when you're done, okay, dog? There's lots of people waiting for me to do this. Oh, she's off again. Alright, we'll just talk over her. So I'm going to put a dot in the middle of the blue, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did for the blue, and then make a small circular motion with the brush. The idea is to leave some of the blue behind. Alright, so for this I'm going back to the magnifying glass. So I would describe that as mixed success. I am going to have to come back and pick up the blue line on the, make it easy, on the right hand side. I don't like that rondelle very well. But there you go, so that's the general idea. Best to get a big dollop of white paint and just make a big blop in the middle and then hope for the best. All right, I'm going to fix up that blue line once this is dried, and then we'll come back for the red dot. So let's talk about highlights. So now I'm going for sort of like an elephant grey, and I'm going to come back and do lines over on the floats and over the front of the aircraft, just to give it some highlights. So I'll do that, and then, because of course, once again, I have to use this here magnifying glass, and then I'll show you the results. Okay, we're back. So I put edge highlights on the edges of any raised surface. Just little elephant grey lines. There we go. Hopefully you can see that all right. All right, now we're going to put some highlights on the wings. And to do that, you need white, and then you can mix it again with the wing color. And all we're going to do is add an edge to the front of the aircraft. Don't want to use too much paint, so I'm just picking out of the lid. Are you going to be able to see this on table? Well, that is a good question. Probably not. But hey, let's go for it. Let's do it anyway. It can only hurt. And that's all we're hoping to do. Just put a line across the wing. Just like that. Using the edge of the brush. And it catches the light and it makes it look like, you know, there's wear or there's sun or something like that. So I'll edge highlight like the rest of that. Do the back of the wing as well. Just run the brush along the edge of the surface. And we'll do that on the rear wing as well. I'll touch that up and I'll come back. So the edge highlight's been done on the one we're going to do next. Just, it makes it easier just so you can see it then. So there it is there. So it's just sort of a whiter shade on top of that desert yellow. You can just see it. And ultimately, you know, it does add probably, you know, another 10% to the miniature. Going back to the late war version that we're working on. So the edge highlight's been put on the wings there. I hope you can see it. It's probably better to see it in person. Or you get more effect from it from that way. Okay, it's crunch time. We're adding those red dots. All right, so get yourself some red. And all you're going to do is load up the front of the tip of your brush with a dollop of red. That's it. There's no finesse here. It's aim and shoot. You are looking for the middle of the target to paint in the bullseye itself. That's it. That's my bullet. All right. You will come back with a success or failure. Okay, so here are the rondelles. Just a dollop of red. Getting the dollop the right size is the hard part, I think. A dot won't do it. You have to go a bit bigger. I think I'm as happy with those as I can be. I think the next aircraft I'll do the rondelles a bit bigger again. Okay, so now we move on to doing an ink wash. For those of you that like your aircraft airfix clean, then, you know, you could probably just go ahead with what's been done. But I don't think I'm going to go too crazy on washes, just a bit here, a bit there. So we'll have a look at that. So again, we're using the Seraphim Sepia. Anything that comes out sort of brown is what we're looking for. A small brush, because we don't really want to, not really painting here, we're just making lines. So I'm going to add a line at the join of the rear wings. And make a line here around the engine. On either side. Join around the back here where the fuselage meets the wing. And as we stated right at the very, very beginning, around the navigator, we're going to make a little splodge of wash to see if that will then carve out for us the impression of a cockpit. And then maybe a bit of wash around the top of that engine there. underneath to the other floats on the wing. Bit of wash there. Okay. Let's have a look at the results of that. And that's pretty much all I want to achieve with the wash, really. Just to give that division in colour. And so we have it. That's the late war one. Looks a bit more military than the early war one, and we'll get on to do the early war one now. So for the early war, short 184, I'm going to just do some browns and some greys and not be hung up on any sort of military style colours. It's going for sort of a more sort of natural kind of raw look. So again with the saddle brown for the wood colour. So I'm going to do the floats in this brown. That's the one at the back, the two underwing floats. And these ones. You don't require much paint for these things. Okay, there we go. So now onto the back one. The other one, the wing ones. Keep that brush wet. Wherever you are, got to keep those brushes clean. Depending on your atmospheric conditions, depends on how quickly the paint dries on your brush. Once it dries, it destroys your brush. Yes, that's the general idea, so I'll pop off and fix the rest of that up. But that's the general idea anyway. Those floats are going to be brown. Then we'll come back and we'll put the grey on the engine. For the engine on this one, I'm going to start with a lighter grey this time. I don't really like the other grey. I think it's a bit too dark. So consequently, we have to highlight with a lighter shade of grey. With the same steps as last time. And that's essentially all we're painting, just that bit there. So I've come back and done some cleaning up on the miniature. I painted in the tail white, ready for the 3 colour stripes. But essentially all I'm going to do is the steps that we did on the other ones, which is put those 2 stripes in and add the roundels. And then you've got a more sort of rustic looking early war aircraft without so much of that military tone that they adopt later on. You know. So next time we come back, I will show you what it looks like with the stripes and the rondelles on it. Yeah, and then we'll move on to doing seaplane carriers. And we're done. So there's the earlier war version. You can see it's not nearly as military. Rondelles look okay. Tailplane. Yeah. Let's see if we can put them both together. All right. Good luck with doing your own planes. Ciao for now.